Ukraine is methodically dismantling the economic engine and fuel supply lines powering Putin's war machine. With over 30% of Russia's refining capacity crippled in recent months, fuel shortages are mounting across Russia. As long as Russia continues its aggression, no military or economic asset inside Russia is out of reach. Let's take a look at Ukraine's relentless deep strike campaign crippling Russia's oil infrastructure and its retail sector. Over 1,200 kilometres deep inside Russian territory, the myth of the Russian rare area security has been shattered once again. Ukrainian long-range strike drones delivered a devastating blow to the massive Taneco oil refinery complex in Nizhnekamsk up near Tartarstan. Overnight and into the morning hours, waves of Ukrainian UAVs bypassed layered air defence networks, set one of Russia's most advanced fuel production hubs ablaze. For Ukrainians, this high-precision strike is a direct and necessary response to Russia's ongoing aerial terror. While Moscow launches ballistic missiles and drones at Ukrainian cities, including the brutal attack on Kyiv that killed 21 civilians, Ukraine is methodically dismantling the economic engine and fuel supply lines powering Putin's war machine. The strike in Tartarstan is not an isolated raid, but the centrepiece of a relentless campaign systematically crippling Russia's war economy. Ukrainian drones reduced the massive 200,000 square metre Wildberries distribution centre in Aleksin to a smouldering rubble pile, destroying vital dual-use components, drone electronics and tactical gear designed for the front lines. Deep strike drone units extended their reach even further east into the Tobolsk region, and that's around this area, striking petrochemical complex in Tobolsk that manufacture rocket fuel, components, high-octane gasoline and composite materials for the Russian military war machine. With over 30% of Russia's refining capacity crippled in recent months, fuel shortages are mounting across Russia, directly disrupting military logistics while draining the Kremlin's export revenues. As Russian officials start to get worried and start to issue threats over the strike in Nizhnekamsk, Ukraine's message remains crystal clear. As Andrei Kovlenko, head of Ukraine's Centre for Countering Disinformation, pointed out, every facility targeted by Ukraine directly feeds the invasion force, manufactures weaponry or funds the war. Every consequence felt inside Russia is the direct result of Vladimir Putin's decision to launch an unprovoked full-scale war. As President Volodymyr Zelensky emphasised, every Russian strike on Ukrainian towns will be met with a calculated, hard-hitting response. By systematically neutralising oil refineries, energy hubs and dual-use supply networks thousands of kilometres deep inside Russian territory, Ukraine's Unmanned Systems Forces are proving that as long as Russia continues its aggression, no military or economic asset inside Russia is out of reach. According to Ukrainian intelligence, here are some of the drones being used in these deep strike operations. We've got the Firepoint FP2, a Ukrainian mid to long-range strike drone equipped with a heavy 105 kilogram warhead and Starlink SATCOM integration, able to perform precise strikes on targets hundreds of kilometres away. Then we've got the Ram-2X, an upgraded Ukrainian X-wing loitering munition capable of striking up to 150 kilometres behind enemy lines. Of course, the Hornet drone, a fixed-wing, long-endurance strike UAV carrying a 5 kilogram payload up to 150 kilometres, designed with high dive speeds and integrated satellite relay. Then the Bliskavka 2, the ultra-low-cost modern drone carrying an 8 kilogram payload over 40 kilometres range, engineered so frontline operators can quickly reconfigure it in the field between disposable strike missions. And finally, the Begemot is a Ukrainian Shahad-style middle strike loitering munition with an operational range of up to 300 kilometres that can carry 2 heavy warheads simultaneously. Now, that's only a small number of the drones that are used. We're not going to touch on all of them here. In the Zaporizhzhia Oblast, Russian commanders have effectively admitted defeat in a costly, months-long infiltration campaign around Novopavlivka, which is between Kostanivka and Orkiv. After spending months sending small infantry groups through gaps in the Ukrainian lines, Russian forces have abandoned those plans to turn those penetrations into larger offensive, pulling their main units back below the river line. Even pro-Russian sources that previously exaggerated minor infiltrations as major territorial gains now admit the effort has completely collapsed under heavy losses. The retreat comes after repeated infiltration attempts turned into high attrition death traps. Across the sector, Ukrainian aerial surveillance systematically caught Russian squads attempting to move through the dense tree lines. Ukrainian FPV operators continuously hunted advancing infantry, flying explosive drones directly into concealed dugouts and dropping grenades into tree lines. Further back in the Novopavlivka sector, Ukrainian FPV operators located and destroyed multiple Russian BM-21 Grad MLRS launchers, providing fire support, stripping the infantry of critical artillery coverage. As main Russian units pulled back behind the river, small infiltration groups that had managed to slip deep behind Ukrainian lines were left entirely stranded. Isolated Russian squads remained hidden in basements and abandoned structures, waiting for reinforcements that would never arrive. With the overall operation called off, Russian commanders halted all resupply efforts, even stopping drone deliveries of food and basic provisions. Written off by their own leadership, these isolated infiltrators were left with a stark choice: starve, die in their hiding places, or surrender. This collapse creates a major dilemma for Russian commanders along the southern front. Every deep infiltration attempt now carries the risk of leaving small units marooned deep inside Ukrainian territory. To rescue them, Russian commanders would have to send fresh troops through routes under heavy Ukrainian drone overwatch, dramatically raising the cost of a failed push. If Russian forces are forced to keep infiltrators close to their main defence lines, they lose the element of surprise and flexibility that made these small unit tactics beneficial in the first place. And this is something we've seen the whole way across the front line. The Russians have pushed these small groups forward. They try and dig in somewhere, hide in a basement, use the rubble in a village and in buildings to say that they've captured somewhere. Take a picture, get it geolocated. It's reported up to their higher command that they've actually captured that area. This is the first time we've seen them admit that they've actually been pushed out of it and not do that. It's happening everywhere across the front line. And this is why it is very difficult, even for us, to assess exactly where the front line is and exactly who has captured what territory and who hasn't captured what territory. And we then have to put this into perspective with trends. The trends up until a couple of months ago were the Russians were advancing very slowly. 10 metres, 15 metres, 20 metres. That trend has stopped. Across a large proportion of the front line now, the Ukrainians are holding any advances up. And in some areas, we're now even seeing the trend reversed, especially in the Zaporizhzhia Oblast, where it's the Ukrainians advancing 10 metres, 20 metres, 50 metres, 100 metres. The Ukrainians are not doing exactly the same as the Russians do. They're not infiltrating and taking photographs so that they can try and demonstrate that they've captured territory, which in reality they haven't. They're not under the same pressure that the Russians are under. The Ukrainians just need to hold things while everything else is going on in the rear areas.